This is Prep Period, an all-sports podcast by the Ventura County Star and the people at VCS Press.
Feeling like I'm ready to get back in the routine. Obviously, it takes training. We had our training camp. We had our off-season edition. I think we had a pretty good week 0 ourselves.
I love it. I believe my mic maybe was off. These are the technical difficulties that begin our journey as podcast producers.
I heard you.
Yeah. Our Teams call audio was on, but my actual microphone was off.
Okay.
Anyway, it was a big first week in high school football, Joe. It was awesome. I know I had a very good time being back out there on the sidelines. The early season, you get the beautiful sun rays, you get the sunset over the field right before things get started. Mm-hmm. Loved that. That was awesome. You did not have that experience for your second game. You were in the very dark at the Cannon Bowl, but
that's right. Yeah, I still want to get my sleep back from that night.
So let's just go through and talk some of these week 0 football games. No better place to start, I guess, than Westlake, where you were to start your evening. You wrote a beautiful roundup lead on kind of things being ahead of schedule over there with the Clawsons kind of taking over there. So why don't you just talk us through that game and what you saw.
So the good thing about the Cannon Bowl starting late was that I had an extra hour to kill. So on my way to Agoura, I stopped off at Westlake for a historic night to see the first game under Rick Clausen. I wanted to see what Ford Green, the freshman quarterback, looked like. I wanted to see how things. I had positive expectations, but not, super strong expectations. There wasn't a high bar to clear, and they cleared it on the first drive where Ford Green went right down the field, connecting with all his receivers, driving them right to a touchdown. Then Damani Bell ripped off a long touchdown, and things were kind of going from there. It looks like obviously, that they're not a complete, well-rounded team roster yet, but with what they have, they're doing some good things, and certainly things are going in the right direction. It's been a really rough couple of years for Westlake, only winning 4 of their last 30 games, I believe, including, they snapped a 10-game losing streak. So to start the season with a 38-14 win is pretty strong, and now all of a sudden, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but the rest of that schedule, there's some interesting games on it.
Absolutely.
And then from there, I went down Thousand Oaks Boulevard, which is what you do when you try to get from Westlake to Agoura. And the game started at 8:15 and was delayed a couple times with some cramping. You have some week 0 cramping. So by the time we got to about 10:30, I was sitting on the sidelines, and I was trying to ask Agoura people, like, do we need to think about, whether these lights are going to come off in it? The way that high school football fields work is you're nestled in communities and they're on timers. So, you get a little late, the things knock off. And so I've been in a couple blackouts in my 25 years. So I was really worried that what happened was going to happen. And so the really funny thing was, after they figured everything out and ended the game, Dustin Croik, the Agoura coach, walks by me and goes, I should have listened to you. And, that could be our motto for the second episode of Prep Period. You can listen to Joe once in a while.
Should have listened to Joe.
That's right. But but the reason we went to the Cannon Bowl was to see Gavin Gray's first game back after breaking his leg. And he did not disappoint. He threw a touchdown on his very first pass. I think he threw 4 first half touchdowns, threw 5 overall. Was absolutely awesome. Agura looked even bigger and better than I expected. So all of a sudden, all the Agura games on the schedule become really interesting. So not all of a sudden, but certainly more interesting than they were, before. Because with George Hastings and Tyler Starling and Gray, there's a lot of reasons to watch Agura, but then you start adding in some of these other guys who had, nice games. Boussier kicked a field goal, had an interception, and had a long touchdown catch, all in the span of, about 5 minutes of gameplay. Obviously, Bellingrath, I think was maybe one of the players I was most impressed with. So that I didn't know much about going in. We'll get to that as well.
That'll be the should have listened to Dom segment of our.
That's right. See, we all need to open our communication lines and trust each other. But and then there's Oak Park, who I think last week on the pod and in some of our coverage, I maybe was pessimistic. Saying they graduated all their just because you graduate 55 of your 56 touchdowns doesn't mean there's more touchdowns on that roster. So they looked Oak Park looked good. Even though they took a beating by their rivals, they hung in there for the first half. They played really tough. They were tied 7-7. They were tied 14-14. They just could not get Gavin Gray off the field when it mattered. And then the big play happened on the last play of the half. Oak Park's trying to go and make it a 1-score game, and they throw it to the end zone trying to get a Hail Mary, and Tyler Starling picks it off. And the moment he gathers and takes 2 strides, one of the fastest players around, I think to myself, he gone. And that's what it was. So he went about 90 yards for an interception return for a touchdown. That went from a really entertaining, first half to, this one's probably in the freezer, in the fridge. So yeah, that made it 34-14 at the half, I think, off the top of my head. So all in all, really first good impression from Agura, from Westlake. And how about Moorpark, dude?
Yeah, so I head over to Rio Mesa, a very short drive from my house over in the Montalvo area in Ventura, and we were expecting another really competitive game. It was kind of the game of week 0 last year.
Yeah.
And it didn't end up being that. We saw a pretty dominant showing from Moorpark. I kind of feel like first week of the high school football season, like a good barometer of how locked in a program is, and how kind of just well put together they are early in the season is how they play on special teams, and penalties or lack of penalties. It's just kind of a good way of seeing where people are at. And Moorpark special teams won them that game. We had a crazy 80-yard kickoff return for a touchdown that kind of fully busted the game open. But we also had, we had blocked punts, and we had, all sorts of stuff going on there on special teams. And it was one of those games where you kind of looked at the offensive stats from Moorpark, and you're like, oh, this is impressive, but, does this really add up to a 44-13 final score? And then you're like, oh yeah, those special teams players were kind of making things happen. Davis Benson, I think, was the kind of the star of the show on the special teams side of things with the kickoff return, and he gets back also and doesn't block a punt, but forces the punter to kind of change his angle at the last minute. Punt goes out at like the Rio Mesa 5-yard line. So that was pretty cool to see, and kind of gave us some added kind of for sureness behind our early prediction that it was going to be a 2-team race in the Channel League this year. Obviously we haven't seen Ventura play because they didn't play in week 0, but yeah, I mean, I came away really impressed with Moorpark. Wyatt Davidson looked good. Garrett Gray looked great on defense, and he got himself a touchdown, punching one in on the first drive to put Moorpark up 7-0. And then on the Rio side of things, obviously a disappointing outcome, but lots of things to kind of be excited about. Lots of flashes. They were without Angel Moreno on defense, their star linebacker, which is like that's going to be tough when you're facing it.
There's the heart of their D.
Exactly. Yeah. But Alec Fontaine, pardon me, looked pretty good. He completed a couple, nice passes, a few of them kind of little dump offs to Juan Munoz, who also looked pretty solid, their new starting running back. But the wheels kind of came off as the game went on, and the Moore Park defense kind of keyed in on him. So but he's a player to kind of keep an eye out for as he sort of adjusts to that starting job. You heard Jim Bittner on the sidelines, Coach Bittner kind of telling him, hey, just take a deep breath, stay cool, stay calm, stay collected. And it'll be cool to see if he can kind of take that advice moving forward, what he's able to do.
Yeah. I mean, you hear a lot of times you get that big jump between the first and second weeks, right? So, really looking forward to seeing what Rio Mesa looks like this weekend and what is a very big week to them, which we will get to in a little bit.
For sure. And then, go ahead, Joe.
Then games that we weren't at, right?
Can't be everywhere.
And our reporting from a lot of the other games, one of the things that really stood out was one of the games that Joe Stradamus got wrong this week, which was
way to take accountability.
Fantastic. It was forced accountability because I was getting text messages in the first quarter when it was 28-0 Fillmore. Just a tremendous first game performance from the New Look Flashes and Fillmore's 49-3 win at Royal. Royal was a team that we were really looking forward to seeing what they look like in the first game under Adam Brubaker. Obviously, they still have some issues to work through. Fillmore, when you have a team that's been together for a long time, and then you're adding in, one of the better defensive coordinators in Ventura County, that was intriguing for us in July, August, and in this, obviously come to fruition with just an absolutely dominant performance. It didn't help, obviously, that Royal lost its starting quarterback after the first series. So one thing I think, with parents who are listening to this or watching this, if you're ever on the sidelines doing the chains, it's very important. The first thing they should teach you when you're on the chain gang is if a player comes near you, if it looks like someone's going to run out of bounds near you, the first thing you have to do is release the stakes and back up. You got to drop. You hear it all the time on a sideline. You hear drop the chains. And what happened in this game was Preston Murray, the Royal quarterback, ran into the chains and hurt a hand. I think he might have a broken wrist, something like that. So Royal loses its starting quarterback, who, by the way, one of the players, really that had a lot of potential to kind of pop this year, and put it together. Really good athlete. I know Royal was really looking forward to what they could do with him. And it kind of sent them reeling a little bit. So we'll see what they're able to do going forward, how they're able to, kind of rally under a backup quarterback. Another thing that didn't help is that when Murray won the starting job, I believe the backup quarterback left the program. So that's another lesson for kids. You never know what's going to happen on a Friday night. Just because you're not named the starter doesn't mean you're not going to play or you're not going to be called on, or it's, circumstances might change. So, a lot of kind of early, important lessons with week 0 in regards to what is a night to forget for Royal, and a night to, really celebrate for the Flashes, who looked really good in their, I guess it's a light blue. They went to a throwback unis. Jersey.
They look cool.
The new unis. And it's a throwback from their 1960s look, which is the last time they beat Royal, 1968. So to bring it all full circle.
That is a fun pull. Unfortunately for Royal, it wasn't just their quarterback. They also lost they lost a captain, Connor Deal, their one of their linebackers, to a broken forearm, I believe it was. So Royal comes out of that game super banged up, kind of reminiscent. We were talking about kind of reminiscent of how Fillmore looked coming out of last year's game
Yeah.
playing Royal. Just a lot of physical play, and unfortunately some injuries. Coach Brubaker was very complimentary of what he saw from Fillmore. Said, we played some solid teams and played pretty well in our scrimmages, and that's a team that has a little something extra than what we've seen. So kind of a learning experience for the kids who made it out of that game unscathed and can move on to next week.
And anything else? Do we want to quickly mention Grace Santa Paula, which was a great back and forth game? Santa Paula rolling up almost 400 yards of rushing, and Grace throwing for a bunch of, I think it was almost 300 yards in their first game of the post Ethan LaSecla era. So you've got, a lot, even, for both those teams putting up almost 80 points combined. Really a lot to look forward to out of those two offenses.
Yeah, Riley Williams, the new starting quarterback at Grace, is feeling like maybe we just start calling it the Riley Williams area instead of the
That's
post
right.
Ethan LaSecla era. He put on a show in that first game, even though it was a loss. He was 15 of 24 for 318 yards and 3 touchdowns, only 1 interception in that loss, and something like 200 yards, and all 3 of those touchdowns went to receiver Landon Cooper. So big game for him as well.
So there's that Grace storyline there. You've got a Riley to Landon. Going after the first week of the season, Riley Williams is second in the county in passing behind a certain Brady Smigel, and Landon Cooper leads Ventura County in receiving.
Wow. Yeah, so that's actually maybe a perfect segue into our stat of the week from the legend Derry Eads, a longtime preps editor here at the Star, and
The Deuce.
The Deuce. So the Deuce's stat of the week is, on the same day, 3 Ventura County quarterbacks had QB ratings of 165.2 or higher. Do you know, without looking at your rundown, Joe, who those 3 quarterbacks were?
The best is he sent that to us, and I didn't, and I've read it, and I can't give it to you off the top of your head, but why don't you?
Yeah, I'll break
I've already
it down.
peeked.
Yeah, I saw the eyes flit to the second monitor. Can't get away with that. So we had Jackson Taylor had an awesome night. What was his final stat
6
line?
of 7, I think.
Yeah, he was six of 7 and a super efficient night. Makes sense. He's on this list. He had a QBR of 165.2. And then second, we had Taylor Lee in a huge outing. First outing as the true starter, not filling in for Dom Duran. Had a 171.1, and at the top of the list was a new starting quarterback, Nate Perez, over at Fillmore, was a perfect 5 for 5, and his QBR was 177.1. The fun little factoid at the bottom of the fact is Gavin Gray, who threw for 293 yards and 5 touchdowns, had only a QBR of 158.1.
Which is hilarious because my recollection of that game is him throwing nothing but completions. I actually at halftime thought he hadn't thrown an incompletion, and I looked at it. His only incompletions in the first half of that game were just or through the end zone as they're going in when there's no space out there. I think it was 2 incompletions through the end zone.
That's great. So before we jump to second period, are we in first period? It's like,
that was first period.
I'm not hearing the bells ring, and I fell asleep in class. So before we move on, just want to give a quick plug to our phenomenal newspaper, so you guys can kind of support the work that we do, the work that our awesome colleagues do. Obviously, a VC Star subscription gets you sports, gets you our prep sports coverage, but it also gets you the breaking news you need to know when things are happening in your community, the investigative stories that our 2 investigative reporters are constantly working on, putting things out. Even tells you, stuff about the new restaurant that opened up around your corner. So, we have everything that you need. So go to vcstar.subscriber.services and sign up for a subscription today. You can get a print subscription. You can do digital only. that part's up to you. And while you're at it, go subscribe to this podcast. We are live on YouTube right now. The tag's www.youtube.com/@VCSPreps. You can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just type in prep period. Will be the VCS Preps one. You can kind of figure that part out. And on Twitter and Instagram, we are at VCS Preps. So with that out of the way, why don't we move on to the probably the thing that took the longest for us to work on, and the thing that gets us the most angry emails, excited retweets, positive and negative feelings. Let's talk about our top 70 player rankings to start the season.
So it's one of the biggest things we do every year. People love it, and it gets a lot of attention, and we put a lot of work into it. So we don't take it lightly. And I had been holding off with the obvious number one for, we made Brady Smigel wait for a couple years here. He's been, I think, second essentially since his awesome freshman year. As we had, I think, a Pacifica player in there when he was a freshman. We had, it was essentially him and Shane as the 1-2 punch the last couple of years. Shane Rosenthal is now at UCLA. Now with Shane Rosenthal gone, put it this way, he was named California's Mr. Football, I think, before we named him our number one player. So
high standards for the sports desk.
We're and he obviously, he's not just the number one player in the Stars rankings this year. He's arguably the number one football player in the history of Ventura County, certainly statistically. And there, everyone knows, the long list of great players that are now in the Ventura County Sports Hall of Fame. From there, you've got, who to go second between Matt Perez, our reigning defensive player of the year. Sorry. I got confused because I'm looking at our page. Oh. I'm looking at our page, and the video is our thing from last week. So you're wearing a different shirt. I know it's last week. Anyway, that was so confusing for a second.
No pink stripes.
Isaac Simpson. It's like, Isaac Simpson and Matt Perez are two of the best defensive linemen that we've covered in the 25 years I've been doing this. And just both of them are trying to get to 20 sacks this year. Just both fantastic players, and they're right there. And then you've got, Oaks Christian's, big time Big Ten recruits, I guess. The running back Deshaun Rideau is committed to USC. Devon Benjamin, the safety / cornerback / return man / receiver, who's committed to Oregon. Speaking of Oregon, Tristan Phillips, the Ventura linebacker, 4-star recruit. So, the easy part of this was the first 7 to 10 names. I mean, I think we've got elite players, many of them committed to, some big time programs. You've got, an Isaiah Phelps, who is one of the top recruits in California as a junior. He's a 4-star recruit who's got 25 scholarship offers. Oregon, national champion, Ohio State, Michigan, Texas, Tennessee, Auburn, Notre Dame, USC, you name it. And so we wait to see him kind of develop, as he gets older. So the top 10 is easy. The rest of it is where you really have to put in work, where we really have to test our opinions, where we get a lot of emails complaining about, why wasn't this guy here? I can't believe you put this guy there.
That's the beauty of it.
What was it like for you going through the process for the first time?
Very cool. Very, very cool. I mean, obviously, I kind of defer to you because you've been here a long time. You've seen, all these players since they, first stepped foot on their respective campuses. I'd say probably 60% of the players on this list I have gotten to see, or in practice or a game, last season in my abridged first year at the Star. But it was cool also to kind of learn, from where we had some of these players that I wasn't as familiar with. So one of the one of the players who I apologize I was not familiar with your game was
So good.
was Damani Bell over at Westlake, which probably to the football fans of Ventura County are scoffing at me right now, but yeah, he's a guy who I didn't get to catch last fall, and we talked about him a little bit. I'm looking through the our first pass at the rankings, and I see running back for a Westlake squad that underperformed last year or had a tough season, went on 0-10, and I'm like, who is this player from Westlake? And Joe's like, just trust me, man.
Check out the highlights.
Yeah, seriously, just a game breaking talent. So I'm just looking forward to getting to see him play in person one of these days pretty soon.
I mean, it makes sense because, a running back off an 0-10 team, really. But like part of the story last year before you got here was how it was really tough to play that Westlake team because they were winless, but you had to deal with Damani Bell, and you knew he was going to, Damani Bell had like 300 yards rushing and 5-6 touchdowns against Agura in a absolute shootout that was in the 50s. And, if you weren't on your P's and Q's defensively, he was going to punish you. And, that's why he piled up, 4 digits of rushing yards and kept them in games, even though they didn't win any games last year. He kept them in it. And now you've got, now they're in a position where they've got a passing game and stuff's going to be open, and you can't just key on him. And so what type of season can he have in a balanced offense where people have to worry about Ford Green throwing the ball and the Davis, multiple Davis brothers running pass routes and some of the other guys they have. And so, I think it bodes well for Damani Bell's senior year. So anyway, really excited to see what he obviously ripped off another long touchdown last week and had almost 200 yards of rushing and did what he did to Damani things. So you are now familiar with his game.
I am now Damani Bell. I am now familiar with your game.
And then I guess
tell us about yours.
The one I learned.
I'm
about,
listening.
That you had him in the rankings, and I think I took him out. And the moment I watched the Agura, the first quarter of the Agura Oak Park game, I was like, well, that was a mistake, because Albert Bellingrath can go, and he's 6'4", and plays both sides of the ball, gives Agura a really tough to deal with red zone and third down target. He's big and physical. He's also a really good defensive end that adds to, Agura is going to go far this year if they're able to be stout up front, and he's certainly a big part of that. So that's somebody who you can guarantee will be in our top 75, top 100 when we do our mid-season update. That's one where, the thing comes out, and then they start playing football, and then, you feel good about, this was a good call, this was a good call, this was a good call. And then, you make a couple mistakes, you learn some stuff, not perfect. And so that, those are some players that we learned about.
One thing I do have to admit is, from what I had seen, I was like, okay, this guy's going to be a stud on defense. I did not quite realize what a weapon he was going to be. Like, we spent all preseason talking about three very deserving, three players very deserving of, being talked about as offensive weapons on that Agora team, and then boom, first game, it's like, 2 touchdowns. He's just going to go up and get the ball. Yeah.
And it's part of, I was on that sideline on Friday talking about, this has got to be the biggest Agura team I can remember. And part of it is he's that big. Some of the linemen they have are big. So they're not the, kind of the, they're not, I think they're better than the, some of the better Agura teams we've seen recently. So we will see. They've got some really interesting matchups in the next couple of weeks where we'll learn more about them. But
I got a question for you here, Joe. As a still relative newcomer to Ventura County football, something that kind of popped to me just looking at your top 10 is it definitely leans towards defensive players. We have, I think there's seven defensive players. Obviously some guys go both ways, but you have Smigel, Rideau, and Hayden Vircher at TO are our 3 offensive players in that list, and all very deserving. But you look at the defensive talents that are on this list, the college interest that they have found. It's kind of seems like a theme there. Like is what do you make of that kind of top defensive talent? Is that something that's kind of been around for a while in Ventura County, or maybe a new trend?
Well, I mean, there was a time when I first got hired here, Ventura County was the county of running backs. You had Tyler Ebell, you had Lorenzo Booker, you had Marcus Crawford, you had uh, the Keaho brothers, you had, I could go on and on and on. In 2000, we were the center of the high school football universe because you had Tyler Ebell trying to rush for 5,000 yards in one season. Do that math, and the kid was rushing for 3, 4, 500 yards every week. It was incredible. But, Newbury Park's always been kind of a cradle of quarterbacks. And so you're in this era now where you've got arguably the best quarterback of certainly the most productive quarterback we've ever seen. But I do think the Perez Simpson axis is really special. Um, you know, these are two guys that are doing things that are just game wreckers. Troy Hill, the St. Bonaventure head coach, compared Matt Perez to his old teammate with the Rams, Aaron Donald, because
Wow.
that's what they're game wreckers, and so
It's cool
I
that
think you've
he can do that because he's actually it's not like,
Yeah.
oh man, this guy's just like insert NFL player here. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's this. So I'm seeing the same stuff I saw at practice.
Yeah, and he shows up. Aaron Donald lives in East County and shows up to games. Like he's been to see me. I think he was at the Sierra Canyon game last weekend.
That's awesome.
So he's still around. He loves ball, so he'll show up where their ball's played. And I just think that's where our elite. I mean, I just think it's where we're at right now. You've got an elite linebacker. You've got multiple elite defensive linemen. You've got don't forget Joe Pecco, who's committed to Colorado. His dad played for the Bengals. If he doesn't get hurt last year, part of the reason Oaks Christian didn't make that Division II final against Newbury was because he was hurt and couldn't play in that semifinal. Um, and then, so I think this is just like where the talent is right now. But, Damani Bell would make an argument that maybe he deserves to be in the top five. We've got multiple Division I quarterbacks that could argue that they deserve to be right up there with Schmeigel, Jackson Taylor um, and the Ventura quarterback Garcia,
Derek Garcia, yeah. And who knows, maybe Gavin Gray as well.
and Gavin Gray. So, I mean, I think it's just kind of maybe that the defensive players are seniors, whereas the offensive players, besides Brady, are younger. So, I don't know. It's a good, yeah. I think it's just that's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought of it like that because I'm picking talent. I'm not picking, offense versus defense. We're trying to make sure that every school has, like there's not a kicker. There probably should have been a kicker. There's a couple kickers who belong on this list. Like I didn't go and I broke it down by team to make sure we had a good balance, right? But I didn't break it down by position. So I apologize to all the kickers and punters. We will get one on the mid-year, because I know there's some good ones
Well,
this year.
yeah, I mean, you told the Boussier story from the first week. Like that's kind of
Yeah.
it's a great.
I mean,
first
he's
outing.
good. There's like multiple guys that can, that are good.
Yeah.
Oak Park had a guy.
I noticed also kind of there's a fun sort of positive feedback loop with Newbury Park. You can call it the Brady Smigel effect. You can call it whatever you want, but you have 3 transfers coming in to Newbury Park who made it onto this list, who are receivers in Devin Olmondi, in Vincent Carner, and in I'm forgetting the name of our
The kid from
St.
Bonaventure.
But he
Hang on.
he had a
I'll get it
great
real quick.
freshman year last year, and it's one of those things where it's like the I'm sure these kids
Darian Johnson.
Darian Johnson, yeah, who made an acrobatic catch in the playoff game I covered.
Yeah.
One of my favorite photos I took last year was that catch. But yeah, so you have those 3 guys who are great talents on their own, deserve to be ranked on their own. But then also as the season goes on, they're playing with Brady Smigel, so they're those I'm sure they're all going to have great years kind of in that system.
Yeah, they made the list based on what they did last year, based on their talent, based on, Vincent Carner had 3 picks too, and he's just a physical force. He's somebody who probably would have made the list without moving to Newbury. Same with Darian Johnson was kind of a story in the playoffs last year. So, you and I had a discussion about whether or not the transfers who aren't playing the first 5 weeks of the season, do we not put them in the list? Do we have a separate part just for transfers? And we elected just to go on talent. There won't be a lot of movement out of those players at the mid-year because they won't be playing.
Totally. Yeah.
But certainly they'll be, we'll be really excited to see what they do in league play.
Absolutely. Do you have any kind of watch list darlings, players other than Bellingrath, who, because I know I can kind of get us started. You can see if you have any, but there's a few players who thankfully, we didn't fully leave them off, but players who were on our watch list who I think week one definitely kind of made a case. So, I think Bellingrath we've talked about him. He's the first name because he's an A and a B. I can't remember if he did last name or first name, but he's the first name on our watch list. He made a case with his week one performance. Kids from that Moore Park Rio Mesa game, there's one on either side, I think, just who totally popped. For Rio Mesa, both touchdowns that they scored against Moore Park were passes from Fontaine to Nate Warren Lewis, who moved from slot to outside receiver. He just got over the top of the Moore Park defense for the first score of the game. Just blazed down the field, caught I'm forgetting how far it was. I think it was maybe 60-yard touchdown from Fontaine, and then he catches a little screen and gets around the corner for the second touchdown of the game. So he had an awesome night on a night that was not awesome for the team overall, but he was kind of a shining star there. And then Davis Benson, who I already talked about, is he caught a touchdown pass, 3 catches in the first drive to set up that first rushing touchdown, and then the special teams awesomeness. So he's another guy to look out for.
So I'm gonna spin this watch list question because I want to go back to our preseason top 65 from last year and look at this watch list. And I'm gonna tell you, the names on this watch list are gonna blow your mind. So, man, this is before last season begins. The guys on this watch list include Gavin Gray, Des Hardy, George Hastings, Kane Miller, Walter Moore, Isaiah Phelps, Zane Reed, Colby Simpson, Jack Shep. I'm going to have to gather before I say Ali Tuahalamaka's name, who's the 4-star D tackle for Oaks Christian. Osegueda from Fillmore. Pee Wee Wilson from St. Bonaventure. Like every single underclassman that was on that list blew up and it is now on the list, right? Mm-hmm. Brett Warner, who is not on the list, who's on this, he had 2 sacks yesterday or last weekend and probably should be on the list. There's another guy that I kind of whiffed on. So, all the underclassmen that are on this watch list, are going places. They did, they had to do something. We took notice of them, that we put them on this watch list. So, things happen really quickly in high school sports where, we're talking just, 12 months between Gavin Gray and George Hastings and Kane and Walter Moore being guys that we're just hearing about to now where they're all, Walter Moore's committed to San Diego State, George Hastings, one of the very best players in the county, Gavin Gray, if he doesn't break his leg, already has Division I. He's probably committed somewhere. Tuahalamaka is a 4-star, defensive tackle who has a bright future. I think that the easy way you're asking me, who's my darlings? With our watch list, baby, they're all they're on that watch list because they're all my darlings. Let me see if I can pull out a couple as I look at this. But yeah, I think that was the fast. We had how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 returning all for first team all county kids. Every single one of them's on the list. About 12 to 15 returning second team all county kids. All of them are on the 75. The watch list itself, I mean, you got Ford Green on there. I couldn't put him in the top 75 before he played a game. Tristan Savage is a really good young player from Ventura that showed really good last year. Jordan Johnson, same thing, the running back for Thousand Oaks. I couldn't put him on the list because, he hadn't done much yet. And he goes out and has a great first game. And, he's somebody that's pushing to be on the list. You really liked Renee Vega when you saw the Santa Paula quarterback when you went there. Alcantar obviously had
Oh yeah.
a
Duh.
3 touchdowns. Sebastian Alcantar had 3 touchdowns in their first game. Wyatt Tejada had a touchdown catch for Oxnard and blocked a kick. Tyler Stromso had over 200 yards of total offense in Newbury Park's opening season loss. Jack Shep, who's on the watch list again, I thought he was ranked. He caught a touchdown pass in his first game. Riley Williams is on there. Landon Cooper is on there. So already, right, these guys are you're seeing them graduate off the list, which is why we go from 75 in the preseason, or 70 in the preseason, 65, 70 in the preseason, to midseason will be 100, because we'll have a lot of these guys step forward and belong on the list, and there'll be guys on the list that we don't want to kick off.
It's a good reminder going through and reading the entire watch list for players who are on the list or not on the list, for parents, for coaches, for us. It's a good reminder to look through that list, and you go all the way down to the bottom of the watch list, and it's like, wow, like the talent in this county is incredible. Like it's tough. It's tough to get, there's players who are electric on Friday nights who are not even on this list. So it's a testament to just how great the talent is around here.
I mean, the top of this list, the top 10 of this list is, I mean, as good. Top 10, top 15 of this list is probably as good as, if we had a list in 2000, if we had a list in 2010, if we had a list in 2015, this class of football player in Ventura County can compete with the best we've seen probably.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool to hear. Do you have any other thoughts on our top 70, or you want to go back to the segment that I ran over in second period, our team rankings?
That's what happens when you make changes right before the, but yeah.
Don't tell them that.
Yeah, I made the change, and I should have been more communicative. See, we got to get on the same page. But send, VC at VCS Joe Curley, send me DMs, tweet at me, joe.curley@vcstar.com. If there's somebody we've missed that really needs to be thought of, nominate. I take nominations for Plays of the Week. I take nominations for this. Open our eyes. We're only two guys covering 25 football teams. We can't be plus other sports. We can't be everywhere. So send us an email, drop us a line, let us know what we're missing.
Yeah, we joke about the angry emails thing, but email us, like contact us. Like we want to hear. We want to hear what you guys. We want to hear what you guys have to say. We can handle it. Yeah. 100%.
It won't be the worst email I got this year, believe me.
Save that story for after the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's jump back to our weekly rankings. Just talk about kind of the teams that moved, the teams that didn't, and kind of why. For players who are sitting in the locker room at practice looking at those rankings, saying, "Why'd Joe and Dom move us here?" Well, this is the time to chat about it.
Yeah, the reason why I wanted to talk about this was just because this, we do our big we rank all 25 teams in the preseason, and then we'll rank all 25 teams after the season. And in between, I rank all 25 teams each week, but I don't, we don't put the last 10 on there because, I don't need to tell, some poor team that they're the worst team in the county every week. So, we'll focus on the positive. And, when you do this, we talked about in the preseason about how it's about resume, about what you've done. And so even though, Simi lost their first game, I kept them at 2 because that was our preseason ranking. They belonged, even though they played early, I didn't count that as part of it. I kept them at 2 because that's where they would have been before they'd have played the game. And then now we've got data, right? When the number 1 ranked team loses, even though they were by far the best team and they have the best player, I'm not going to keep them at 1. And then the number 2 ranked team lost twice, and the number 3 ranked team lost. So even though those are, non-league games in 2025 they don't kill your season. Some would argue that they help you to lose in the non-league. We don't have to open that door right now. But in terms of this poll, three of the biggest names in our area got beat over the weekend and moved down. And then it was a question of who's number one. And I think of the top teams that won, it was essentially Pacifica or St. Bonaventure. And it was fairly easy to pick one over the other because they just played in the playoffs where Pacifica edged St. Bonaventure in a great game. And Pacifica looked absolutely phenomenal in there. And they're a team that has depth, has returning talent, you're starting to wonder now, it's only the first group of games, but you're starting to wonder, is this the team that's the Newbury Park team from last year? That's the Pacifica team from 2 years ago. That's the Simi team when they were 10-0. Is this our elite 10-0 team? Is it Pacifica? Where are the losses?
All the pieces to make it happen.
Where are the losses on that schedule? You look at the schedule, you say, where are the losses on that schedule? So anyway, so that we could talk about that in subsequent weeks, but Pacifica to me was the easy number one. St. Bonaventure, being one of the better teams that wins, belong to move up to 2. They obviously, they only scored 19 points against the St. Francis team that was down to its 5th quarterback, dominant defensively. Now they've got some things they got to sort out offensively. You expect that with a first-year coach coaching his first game. So that's totally cool. And then the other thing, good teams that were in the poll that won, that looked good, TO is going to go up. Agoura is going to go up. Moore Park's going to go up. And it was kind of ordering those teams. To me, it's the first week. We don't have a ton of data. I just kind of kept them in the same order we had them. Do you, I don't know. What do you think? We had, it's TO, Agoura, Moore Park. Do you have any quibbles with that order? The good news is that in a couple of weeks, TO is going to play Agoura, so that'll sort itself out real quick.
Yeah, I think we're going to get it. We're maybe jumping the gun a little bit here, so we won't talk about this game until later on in the show. But we're going to get a great data point when TO plays Ventura this week.
Sure.
So that'll be super helpful for kind of locating them. But 3 great, really competitive teams. I told you when the season began, when we were first doing our rankings, this cluster of teams that we have in our rankings there with TO, with Ventura, with Moore Park, with Agoura, anytime those 4 teams play, I'm going to be begging to cover that game because I think all 4 of those teams are going to be really competitive with each other in that kind of, that tier. So
yeah. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And then the other big question, I think I texted you and Derry, it's what do you do with Westlake when they come off an 0-10 season and win their first game pretty impressively? And Derry agreed with me. I almost did Calabasas Westlake as co-10s, but I'm coming off an 0-10 season, we led the roundup with them. Westlake can be that first 5 leader. They can be that 11th team, right? Because I thought Calabasas played really well and deserved to stay in the poll. And I wasn't going to knock them off after they beat Alemany, which anytime Calabasas beats Alemany is, it's a really good sign for the Coyotes. So yeah, I think that's enough. That's enough. Rankings talk. What do you need?
Oh no, I was just gonna say I think that's as great as they looked, I don't think there's any team in this top 10 that you can, in good conscience bump off the top 10 for Westlake even after that great first game. If you put them on, maybe a couple weeks from now you'd look like a genius wizard, but we're not in that business. We're trying to be as accurate as we can with what we know, and I think that's right. I think you got it right.
All right. Well, there's one. There'll be times when I get it wrong for sure, but that's why we exist to
don't worry,
provide bulletin board material.
I'll tell you when you're wrong. I'll tell you loudly. So, what do we got next? You want to talk through? We are coming up on 50 minutes here, so we got 10 minutes to quickly talk through the upcoming games, tell people where we're going to be, and kind of what you're looking for.
Well, let's pull up their positive run. But the the big thing this weekend is these early season rivalry games where if you they hung in there, really good Santa Barbara team and played really tough and ended up being a 21-14 game where Camarillo kind of works their way back in. And so I think the Scorpions are coming off kind of a positive result, even though it was a loss.
Had four
Um,
takeaways in that game, right?
yeah, defensively they played really well. And I think, it kind of speaks to the changes that they're trying to make as they're trying to be competitive in the Marmani League. Um, and then you spoke about Rio earlier. Bonnie is at Birmingham. Simi Valley leaves the state to go to Shadow Ridge. So I think that game's in Nevada.
That
Um,
Nevada connection, man.
yeah, they're playing more Nevada teams than county teams right now. Canyon at Buena, Moore Park at Bakersfield Centennial, Saugus at Oak Park. So that's kind of interesting. Saugus coming off a good performance against Buena, again, an Oak Park team that played pretty well for a half. Um, Royal at DP. That's a game that Royal won last year. So maybe they're able to kind of bounce back after their rough first game. Chaffee at Fillmore. I'm pretty sure Chaffee won that game last year. Um, Coach Weiss will correct me if I'm wrong. But obviously, the big game from our perspective is one of those cross county, big public school interleague kind of showdowns, and that's Ventura at TO.
Is it Charlie Weiss? Is it Charlie's been too nice to,
It
to
is,
nice to correct me every
yeah.
time I've ever heard referred to him
I
as Charlie
called
Weiss?
him, I called him Weiss for years, so I heard recently someone call him anyway. But yeah, it's Charlie Weiss because of like the old Notre Dame head coach, right?
Yeah,
So, but I'm
can't
pretty sure
escape
he
that.
calls it Weiss.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, that what was that? Oh yeah, the Oak Park Saugus game is like, I think I've used the words data point like 8 times in this podcast, but it really is like when you get those shared opponents, like for us, that's like it's like Christmas morning because we get the information. Obviously, you're not the same team week to week. Things change, players get hurt, players get better. Scheme differences, that kind of thing. But when we get to see two local teams, especially two teams in the same league, in the Channel League, in Buena and Oak Park, I think that's going to be cool for us to kind of just see how they fare against a similar opponent, the same opponent.
and then so are we gonna like rock paper scissors to cover this Ventura TO game?
Sounds like it's been given to you. So it's if
So
I'm only covering it if you want to be nice to me.
so you got two of the top three quarterbacks around, both Division One quarterbacks going back to back, going head to head, I should say, not back to back. It's weird. Um,
That was
and
weird.
you've got a ton of Division One talent on display. Ventura is interesting in that they're taking week 0 off a couple years in a row. So we'll see how that helps or hinders them. Um, and obviously TO looked really good in their opener. So this is you know this is for okay. Who's a top 10? Who's a top 5 team in Ventura County? The winner of this game, proclaims itself as one of the maybe the yeah one of the best non-Marmani League teams around.
The storyline I kind of want to track in that game, because you put those two teams up next to each other. You have future Division One quarterbacks in Jackson Taylor and Derek Garcia, so you get that perfect head to head. You have phenomenal receivers who play very differently in Hayden Vircher and Jack Cunningham, and you also have Luke Sullivan there, who's always a threat. But then you look at that kind of the third player, right? And for Ventura, it's Tristan Phillips, who's he's a defensive stud who's going to be disruptive and cause problems and make tackles and all that kind of stuff. I want to see who kind of, in the post McEnroe era, the player, the stud, linebacker last year, who's going to be that defensive playmaker for TO in this game to kind of, match Phillips' production and kind of do some damage on that end. Just seeing those two teams, the players that we have ranked, kind of going into that game, going up against each other. I think that's a fun little storyline.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Again, there's like 5 different sidelines that I'd like to be on this weekend. I love rivalry games. I love cross county interesting games like that Ventura TO game. So honestly, I'm not going to argue with where our boss puts us at all because I'd be happy on 6, 7 different sidelines this weekend.
I'm going to be happy if I'm on any sideline. This is the best time of year. I tweeted out that my one tweet before I switched out to the VCS Preps account was, "It's the most wonderful time," and it truly is.
Wow, singing, I love it. Yeah, and I feel that's how I feel. I'll start singing when I get that first tri-tip of the year. I haven't grabbed a tri-tip yet. I had a burger at Simi. I didn't get to the food at Agura, so we'll have to see whether or not TO has tri-tip this weekend if that's where I am.
All right, I think that's everything we've got for today. Remember to go follow us on social media at VCS Preps. At VCS Preps on YouTube as well, and keep an eye out in the next couple of hours and into the evening for our published episode. This episode up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Joe, you got anything to plug before we go?
Yeah, we've got your volleyball rankings coming out at some point.
How could I forget?
All your volleyball stuff is starting to hit, which means I got to get moving on flag football and some other stuff. But Joe Shadamas will hit on probably Thursday midday. Go hit that top 70 if you haven't seen it yet. It did very well traffic wise, and it'll be up there. And the roundup that you mentioned, and a couple things. The team rankings are up. We will have some other stuff. Just like and subscribe. Get on that, download